chapters 1 through 7 of the book of Leviticus, from the Holy Bible in Modern English. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. The Holy Bible in Modern English, translated by Ferrar Fenton. The book of Leviticus, chapters 1 through 7. Chapter 1. Then the ever-living called to Moses and spoke to him from the hall of the assembly, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, A man of you who would offer an offering to the ever-living can offer it from the herd, or from the fold, or from the flock. If they offer a burnt offering from the fold, it shall be a perfect male. It shall be offered at the door of the tent of assembly as a pleasure to him before the ever-living. Then he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sacrifice, and present it before the ever-living to expiate for himself. And he must slay the son of the fold before the ever-living. Then the sons of Aaron the priest shall approach the blood, and sprinkle some of the blood around over the altar that is at the door of the hall of assembly. Afterwards he shall skin the sacrifice and divide it into parts. Then the sons of Aaron the priest shall lay the parts of the head and fat in order upon the wood, and put fire upon the altar, and arrange wood upon the fire that is on the altar, after washing the inwards and the feet in water. And the priest shall burn the whole of them on the altar, as a sweet, delightful perfume to the ever-living. But if he offers from the sheep or from the lambs, or from the goats, he shall offer as a burnt offering a perfect male, and slay it at the north side of the altar before the ever-living. And the sons of Aaron the priest shall sprinkle some of its blood around the altar. Then he shall divide it into parts, and the priest shall arrange its head and its fat upon the wood that is upon the fire that is on the altar. Then he shall wash its inwards and legs in water. And the priest shall offer the whole of them with incense upon the altar of burnt offering, as a sweet breath, delightful to the ever-living. But if he sacrifices a gift from the birds to the ever-living, let him offer his gift from the turtle-doves, or the young of pigeons. And the priest shall take it to the altar, and wring off its head, and perfume the altar, and present its blood at the side of the altar, and pull out its crop and feathers, and throw them to the eastern side of the altar, into the receptacle for the fat. Then the priest shall cleave it, not separate, and perfume the altar for it, offering it upon the wood which is on the fire. It is sweet smell, delightful to the ever-living. Chapter 2. And the soul that gives a present to the ever-living, let it be a fine flour, and pour oil upon it, and put frankincense on it, and bring it to the sons of Aaron the priest. And the priest shall grasp a handful from the fine flour and the oil, with all the frankincense, and shall burn as a remembrance on the altar a sweet perfume delightful to the ever-living. But the rest of the offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, holy of holies from the fire of the ever-living. But if he would offer a present baked in the oven, let it be of fine ground flour, biscuits mixed with oil, or wafer biscuits buttered with oil. If, however, your gift is a present of baked bread, it shall be of fine flour with oil, unfermented and broken in pieces with oil poured upon it. It is a present. But if you give a boiled present, let it be made of fine flour with oil. And you shall bring the present that you have made from it to the ever-living, and approach to the priest, and he shall carry it to the altar. Then the priest shall lift up the present as a remembrance, and perfume the altar, a sweet smell delightful to the ever-living. But the rest of the present shall be for Aaron and his sons, holy of holies from the fire of the ever-living. Any present which they offer to the ever-living shall not be made with ferment, for not any ferment or any honey shall be burnt with it as a delight to the ever-living. You shall bring them as an offering of the best kinds to the ever-living. They shall not be burnt upon the altar as a breath of delight. Every offering presented by you shall be salted with salt, and you shall not withhold the salt of the covenant of your God from your presence. Upon every offering you shall offer salt. And if you offer a present from your crops to the ever-living, it shall be ears of wheat or oats from the field, as a present from your crops. You shall also put upon it oil, and add along with it frankincense. It is a present. Therefore the priest shall burn the remembrance from the corn and from the oil, with all the frankincense, as a perfume to the ever-living. Chapter 3. But if anyone offers a thank offering, let it be offered from the herd. Only a perfect, spotless male may be offered to the ever-living. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of his offering, and slay it at the door of the hall of assembly. And the sons of Aaron the priest shall sprinkle some of the blood around upon the altar. He shall offer on the altar the thank offering as a delight to the ever-living: the fat of the caul, the chest, and the whole of the fat that is upon the chest, with the 2 kidneys and the fat that is upon them, and on the viscera; but the rest on the liver, and upon the kidneys he shall put aside. For the sons of Aaron shall offer them upon the altar of burnt offering, with wood and fire, as a sweet breath to the ever-living. But if he offers a sacrifice from the flock as a thank offering, let him offer a perfect male or female. If he offers a lamb as his gift, then he shall bring it before the ever-living, and lay his hand upon the head of the gift, and slay it before the hall of assembly. And the sons of Aaron shall sprinkle some of its blood around the altar, and shall carry to the altar, from the thank offering made by fire to the ever-living, the entire fat of the rump cut near the backbone, and the fat of the caul and of the chest, and all the fat that is upon the chest, and the 2 kidneys and the fat which is upon them, with that upon the bowels, and the remainder that covers the kidneys he shall put aside. And the priest shall offer them upon the altar as a sweet scent to the ever-living. But if he offers a gift of a goat before the ever-living, he shall lay his hand upon its head, and slay it before the hall of assembly. And the sons of Aaron shall sprinkle some of its blood around the altar, and offer of the gift as a sweet scent to the ever-living, the fat of the caul, and the chest, and the whole of the fat that is upon the chest, and the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, with that upon the bowels, but the remainder covering over the kidneys he shall put aside. Thus the priest shall burn them on the altar, consuming as a sweet breath, delightful to the ever-living, all the fat. It is an institution forever, for your descendants, in all your dwelling places, that you shall not eat any fat or any blood. Chapter 4. Then the ever-living spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, to command: the soul that sins by ignorance in any of the commands of the ever-living, through not having done, or doing it unconsciously, if a consecrated priest shall sin to the injury of the people, then he shall offer for the sin which he has sinned a perfect bullock from the fold, to the ever-living for his sin. And he shall bring the ox to the door of the hall of assembly before the ever-living, and lay his hand upon the head of the ox, and slay the ox before the ever-living. Then the consecrated priest shall take some of the blood of the ox, and carry it into the hall of assembly, where the priest shall dip his forefinger into the blood 7 times before the ever-living, opposite the door of the sanctuary. And the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of perfumed incense which is before the ever-living in the hall of assembly. And the rest of the blood of the ox shall be poured at the side of the altar which is at the door of the hall of assembly. Then he shall remove the whole of the fat of the ox of the sin offering from it, the fat of the caul, with the chest and all the fat upon the chest, and the 2 kidneys and the fat which is upon them, with the fat of the bowels, and the remainder covering the kidneys, he shall put aside, exactly as it is taken from the ox sacrificed as a peace offering. Then the priest shall burn it upon the altar of burnt offering. But all the skin of the ox, and the whole of the flesh, with its head and chest and dung, he shall also cause to be brought, the whole of the ox, to the outside of the camp, to a clean place, to burn the fat upon wood with fire. It shall be burnt where the ashes are poured out. But if any of the fathers of Israel goes and secretly commits out of the sight of the public a breach of one of the commandments of the ever-living, which they should not do, and he sins, then he shall confess the sin that he has sinned, and shall offer publicly an ox from the fold for his sin, and bring it to the front of the hall of assembly, where the elders of the parliament shall lay their hands upon the head of the ox before the ever-living, and slay the ox before the Lord. Then the consecrated priest shall bring some of the blood of the ox to the hall of assembly, where the priest shall dip his forefinger into some of the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the ever-living at the front of the veil. But he shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar, that is before the ever-living in the hall of assembly. And all the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the side of the altar of burnt offerings, at the door of the hall of assembly. He shall then remove the whole of the fat from it, and offer it on the altar. And do with the ox, as he does with the ox for a sin offering, he shall do the same. Thus the priest shall expiate for him and forgive him. Next he shall cause the ox to be brought outside of the camp and burn it, as he burnt the former ox. It is a public offering. When a man sins and breaks one of all the commandments of his ever-living God, which he ought not to do, by ignorance and has sinned, or if he is informed of his sin that he has sinned, then he shall offer as a gift a perfect ram of the goats, and lay his hand upon the head of the ram, and slay it in the place where the burnt offerings are slain before the ever-living. It is a sin offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood upon the tip of his forefinger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offerings, and pour the rest of the blood at the side of the altar of burnt offerings, and offer all the fat on the altar, like the fat of the thank offering, and expiate for him for his sin, when it shall be forgiven to him. But if any of the people of the land break a commandment of the ever-living, which ought not to be done, and transgresses, or he is informed that he has sinned some sin, he shall then bring a perfect she-goat as an offering for the sin he has sinned, and lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of burnt offerings. Then the priest shall take some of the blood upon his forefinger, and put on the horns of the altar of burnt offerings, and pour out the rest of the blood at the side of the altar, and remove the whole of the fat, as he removed the fat from off the thank offering. Then the priest shall offer it upon the altar as a breath delightful to the ever-living, and the priest shall expiate for him, and he shall be forgiven. But if a person brings his gift for sin, let him bring for it a perfect female, and lay his hand upon the head of his sin offering, and slay it in the place where the burnt offerings are slain. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering on his forefinger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offerings, but pour out all the rest of the blood at the side of the altar, and remove all the fat, as he removed the fat of the lamb offered for thanks. And the priest shall consume it upon the altar as a perfume to the ever-living, and the priest shall expiate for him for his sin that he sinned, and it shall be forgiven to him. Chapter 5. When a person who is a witness sins when he has taken the declaration of an oath about an event he saw or knew, if he does not relate it, he shall bear his crime. Or a person who has touched anything unclean, or a corpse that is unclean, or carcass of an unclean beast, or an unclean reptile, and it was unknown to him, he is unclean and guilty. Or if he touches uncleanness of blood, or any uncleanness that may defile him, and he did not know it, yet he is guilty. Or a person listening to a libel injurious to his neighbor, or who delights in anything which injures the man by being reported, and hides it when he knew it, then he is guilty by it. And as he has offended in this, he shall make confession that he has sinned over it, and shall bring to the ever-living for his fault that he has sinned a female lamb from the sheep, or a female goat for a sin offering, and the priest shall expiate for his sin. But if he did not personally participate with the fault, then he shall bring for the fault that he has sinned 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the ever-living, one for a sin offering, and one for a burnt offering. Let him bring them to the priest, and offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring off its head from its neck, but not separate it, and sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering at the side of the altar, and throw the rest of the blood to the side of the altar for sin offerings. But make of the second a burnt offering for judgment, and the priest shall expiate for him for the sin he has committed, and it shall be forgiven to him. But if he does not possess the 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then let him bring as his gift for the sin he has sinned the 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour. He shall not pour upon it oil, nor put frankincense with it, for it is a sin offering, but bring it to the priest, and the priest shall grasp a handful of it for a remembrance, and burn it on the altar for a perfume to the ever-living. It is a sin offering. Then the priest shall expiate for him over the sin which he has sinned, and it shall be forgiven to him. But the gift shall belong to the priest. The ever-living also spoke to Moses, saying, A person who perversely sins in what is holy to the ever-living shall bring for his gift to the Lord a perfect ram of the sheep, of the value of 2 shekels by the sacred shekel, for his fault, and that in which he has sinned, in what is holy, he shall restore fivefold as much for it, and give it to the priest. And the priest shall expiate with the ram for his fault, and it shall be forgiven to him. But if a person has sinned and broken one of the commandments of the ever-living, which should not be done, and did not know it, yet he is faulty, and shall bear his fault and bring a perfect ram of the sheep on account of his fault, to the priest. And the priest shall expiate for him over his error which he has erred when he knew it not, and it shall be forgiven to him. It is a fault offering for error to the ever-living. The ever-living also spoke to Moses, saying, A person who sins with willful perversity against the ever-living, by deceiving his neighbor in a contract, or in a confidential trust, or robs or betrays his neighbor, or retains a find and lies about it, and swears with falsehood about anything which may injure the man, sins by it. But if it be that he has sinned and done wrong, but returns the theft that he has stolen, or the deception that he has sinned in, or the trust that was entrusted to him, or the strayling that he has found, or in anything where he has sworn about it to deceive, and rectifies it, on the head of it he shall add fivefold to what he took to himself. They shall be given in place of his fault. Then the guilty man shall bring for the ever-living a perfect ram of the sheep to the priest, because of his fault. And the priest shall expiate for him before the ever-living, and he shall be forgiven at once for all that he has done wrong in it. Chapter 6. The ever-living also spoke to Moses, saying, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, These are the laws of the burnt offerings, that is, the offerings for burning upon the altar. All the night until daybreak fire shall burn upon the altar for it. The priest shall be clothed with his garments upon his limbs, and his frock on to cover his flesh. And he shall rake out the ashes that the fire upon the altar produces, and supply wood to the altar. Then he shall strip off his clothes, and put on other clothes, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. The fire of the altar must burn unextinguished upon it. None shall quench it. But the priest shall lay wood upon it every morning, and lay upon it the burnt offering and incense with the fat of the peace offerings. The fire shall always burn upon the altar. It shall not be quenched. And these are the laws of the food gifts that the sons of Aaron shall offer before the ever-living in front of the altar. They shall take some from the flour of the gift, and put upon the altar, with the whole of the frankincense which is with the gift, and burn as incense upon the altar, as a delightful breath of remembrance to the ever-living. But the rest of it Aaron and his sons shall eat. They shall eat it unfermented in the holy place in the court of the hall of assembly. They shall not bake their portion with ferment. I give it to them for a flavor. It is holy of holies, like the sin offering, and like the trespass offering. Any male of the children of Aaron may eat of it. This is a perpetual constitution for their descendants. As it is a flavor of the ever-living, let all be holy who touch it. The ever-living further spoke to Moses, saying, This is the gift that Aaron and his sons shall offer during the period of their consecration, 1/10 of an ephah of flour as a perpetual offering between daybreak and evening, or half at the daybreak and half at the dusk. Let it be made saturated with oil in a pan. Bring it in baked flat cakes, a delightful breath to the ever-living. The consecrated priest of that course shall make it. It is a perpetual constitution to the ever-living, to be totally burnt. Every food offering from a priest shall be burnt. You shall not eat it. The ever-living also spoke to Moses, saying, Speak, commanding Aaron and his sons. These are the laws of the sin offering. In the place where you slay the burnt offering, you shall slay the sin offering before the ever-living. It is holy of holies. The priest that offers it for sin shall eat it in the holy place. Eat it in the court of the hall of assembly. All who touch the flesh shall be holy. And whoever is sprinkled with a blood upon his garments, whatever is sprinkled with it, shall wash his clothing in the holy place. Any vessel of pottery also in which it is boiled shall be broken. And if it is boiled in a vessel of bronze, it shall be scoured and washed with water. Every male of the priests may eat of it. It is holy of holies. But any sin offering that is brought to the hall of assembly for a holy expiation you shall not eat. It shall be consumed by fire. Chapter 7. These are also laws of the trespass offerings. They are holy of holies. In the place where they slay the sacrifices for sin, they shall slay the trespass offerings, and their blood shall be sprinkled around the altar, and all the fat of it shall be offered up, the fat of the tail, and the fat of the caul, and of the chest. But the 2 kidneys with the fat that is upon them he shall put aside. Then the priest shall burn them with incense at the altar, as a flavor to the ever-living. It is a trespass offering. As with the sin offering, so with the trespass offering, there is one law for them. The priest who has expiated with it shall have it for himself. The priest who offers up the burnt offering for a man, the skin of the burnt offering that he has offered, shall belong to the priest. Every food offering which is baked in an oven, and all made in a pan or upon a pan, it shall belong to the priest who presents it. But every food offering mixed with oil or dry shall belong to all the sons of Aaron, each one as brothers. And these are the laws of the sacrifices of thanks which may be presented to the ever-living. If a man offers for thanksgiving, let him offer as a sacrifice of thanksgiving cakes of unfermented bread mixed with oil, and unfermented wafers buttered with oil, and flour saturated by rolling in oil. Let him offer no cakes of fermented bread with his gift upon the altar when thanksgiving for a benefit. And let him offer the same with every offering lifted up to the ever-living. It shall belong to the priest who sprinkles the blood of the thank offering for him to the ever-living. But the flesh of the sacrifice of the thank offering shall be eaten that day. None of it shall be left till the next morning. But if he gives a sacrifice for a vow or a freewill gift, he may eat of it the day it is offered in sacrifice, and what remains of it he may eat tomorrow. But the remainder of the flesh of a sacrifice shall be burnt with fire on the 3rd day. And if he eats of the flesh of a sacrifice for a benefit on the 3rd day, it shall not be accepted as an offering from him, it shall not benefit him. It will be unclean, and the person who eats of it shall bear his punishment. Flesh also that has touched anything unclean shall not be eaten. It shall be burnt with fire. But the flesh of everything clean may be eaten as food. But the person who eats the flesh of a sacrifice made to the ever-living for a benefit, and defiles himself over it, that person shall be excommunicated from his people. The person also who touches anything defiled by the defilement of blood, or by an unclean beast, or by any unclean reptile, and yet eats of the flesh as a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the ever-living, that person shall be excommunicated from his people. Again the ever-living spoke to Moses, saying, Any of the fat of an ox, or sheep, or goat you shall not eat, but the fat of a carcass, and the fat of a torn animal may be used for any work, but you shall not eat of it, for whoever eats the fat of a beast which is offered to the ever-living, that person shall be excommunicated from his people. Nor shall you eat any blood in any of your dwelling places, either of bird or beast. Every person who eats any blood, that person shall be excommunicated from his people. The ever-living spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, Whoever offers at the altar his thank offering to the ever-living, let him bring his gift to the altar of the ever-living for his benefit. He shall bring in his hand the present to the ever-living. Bring the breast with its fat to be waved, for waving before the ever-living. But the priest shall burn the fat upon the altar, and the breast shall be for Aaron and his sons. The raised leg also you shall give to the priest who lifts it up as a sacrifice for a benefit. Whoever of the sons of Aaron offers the blood of the thank offering shall have the right leg for a gift. For the waved breast and the raised leg I have taken from the children of Israel from their sacrifice of thanks, and I give them to Aaron the priest and to his sons to be taken by them forever from the children of Israel. They are the portion of Aaron and the portion of his sons from the gifts to the ever-living, during the time they offer them as priests to the ever-living, which the ever-living commanded to be given to them at the time he consecrated them, as an endowment from the children of Israel and their posterity forever. This is the law for burnt offerings, and for sins, and for trespasses, and for consecrations, and for sacrifices of thanks, which the ever-living commanded to Moses upon Mount Sinai, at the time he commanded the children of Israel to offer gifts to the ever-living in the desert of Sinai. The end of chapters 1 through 7 of the book of Leviticus. Recording by Mark Penfold.